you may have read my bio. I won't sort of tell you what I do, except I'm going to focus on one part of my work today, which is group work. So over the last 10 years, I've been developing a group working process, so focused on group process. So all groups have process. It's just sometimes they're conscious of it and sometimes they're not. Very often they're not. So when a group forms, there's a whole lot of concerns alive in the people that are coming to form that group. And you will have done this when you met together on Tuesday night and you were coming from all over the country, and you would have been coming thinking, gosh, I'm going to have to be really smart when I get there. It's a little bit like what you talked about, Solomon. You know, I've got to say really smart things and be a smart person in this particular way. And you might have had some things coming alive in you about what am I going to do to be accepted there? Will I be safe there? How much of myself can I bring there to this workshop that I'm going to? So that would be the safety concerns that a group forms around. And then there's a competitive dynamic that forms in any group as well. So that's what am I going to have to do to win in this group? Is this going to be a group that carries us all forward together? Am I going to be competing? Who's in, who's out? All of those things, and they're alive in every group. And another component of when a group forms, its culture around is, so we've got competitive dynamic and there's an authority dynamic. So will my offers of leadership be accepted? Will I accept offers of leadership from other people? What's my authority? Will I feel safe with the leadership? Am I going to agree and go along with stuff? Will people agree and go along with me? So all of those things are alive in the groups that, in all groups, but in the groups that I've worked with, mostly with the students of Toi Whakaari, the New Zealand Drama School, but also I've worked in this building with some groups of Treasury folk as well, and those dynamics would be consistent in all groups. So I'm there as a group worker, listening to cues in the group, because the culture of the group will form around how the group responds to those questions, alive in folk, as the group meets. So the culture of the group that I'm trying to form a conscious culture. So I work with folk to make it clear what's the culture we're forming that will enable people to work to the best of their ability. And I'm really interested in what you were saying, Roger, around the things of technology and those questions that you had, Francis, around all of the world population and work, because I'm thinking actually what really matters is the dyads, how you work and form relationships, whether you're working or having that leisure time. What's the quality of your happiness? What's the quality of your human relationships? So that's fundamental in every group. So I'm going to tell you a story, because I'm talking about futures of story, about a moment working with one of the groups at Toi Whakaari, New Zealand Drama School. So I'm working with they're first year actors, but there's about 30 of them. So they've just arrived, they're forming their group culture, they've had nearly a term of working together, and I'm having my second or third session with them. So we're sitting in a big circle, or maybe it's a horseshoe, because we often do work out the front and concretise things and work with action. And so I'm sitting there and we're talking about the theme of feedback. And somebody has brought up this question. They've said, look, when we're working and I do a piece of work, I'd really like feedback, because you all sit there kind of blank and I don't know how I've gone, and I get a bit paranoid in my head about what you guys are thinking. Did I do a good job or not? And so I want some feedback. And somebody else says, oh, well, look, I've got some feedback for you, but, I don't want to be brutal. You might get really hurt if I just tell you what I really think. So are you really going to be all right with that? And somebody else says, oh, yeah, I want some feedback too, but I don't want, brutal honesty. Can you only just tell me the things that are, that I did good? Just constructive feedback. And somebody else says, actually, I don't want feedback from any of you. I'm only really interested in what the teachers say. So I only really want teachers' feedback. So, don't come near me with feedback. So you can hear already there's the authority dynamic going, there's the competitive dynamic going, there's the safety dynamic going. It's all going on, and that's the bit where I get to slow it down and we start to form consciously the culture. What's the way that's going to work? And this lovely young man, Josh, he's a very muscled, well-built guy, and he's very earnest, and he's getting a little bit anxious about this conversation, because often that's what happens. It gets a bit uncomfortable. And he says, well, look, everybody thinks that blah, 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 blah. And I can't quite even remember what he thought everybody thought, but I was interested in this. To me, that was a culture cue. They were going to either accept that he was going to speak on behalf of everybody, or they weren't. But I just paused him at that point, said, just hang on a minute, Josh, that's cool, so that's clear what you think. Let's find out. Does anybody think differently? Are there some other ways of thinking? Somebody after a while went, yeah, actually, I don't think that. I think blah, blah, blah. And somebody else said, yeah, I think a bit more like she does. That's, but I think la, 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 la. Anyway, Josh did a jaw drop. So could you demonstrate a jaw drop? Yeah, and like a beautiful jaw drop. He just was gobsmacked. And he said, you don't think this thing? No, they said, we don't think that. He said, I thought everybody thought that. I thought everybody thought that. He was just absolutely dumbfounded. So the conversation went on, and Josh put his head in his hands. Can you do it? Yep. He did this, and then he went like, through the session, he kept his head in his hands, and every once in a while he'd look up and he'd say, I thought everybody thought that. Anyway, I let him quietly recalibrate his picture of the world, of everybody in it, of the planet, of the universe, and he was recalibrating everything that he had assumed was true. He suddenly realised was a story in his head, and that actually other people had different stories in their head. So why am I telling you this story? You are in a story that is emerging now. So you're in the story of this group as it forms, and you're getting yourself on the map and in the conversation about the futures, possible futures of our country and all of the connections that we've got. So basically to the planet, to all the people on it and the resources and this beautiful world that we live in. So you're in a story that's emerging. Everyone else is in your story too, but the story in their head is different to yours. And in this moment that Josh did this piece of work, it was intensely uncomfortable for him. He really had to work hard, but he did a piece of work for his group, which was they got to see that assumptions aren't useful, that it's actually not safe to assume that everybody has the same story as you in their head. And he became actually a really great person in that group for the next 3 years while he worked with them. He was really good at saying, hey, I've got this idea, or I'm thinking this, what do other people think? He just couldn't rely on the fact that he assumed or knew. So this last bit is that a group culture that tolerates not knowing enables inquiry, learning, discovery and connection, but it's only when you get to understand what's the story in somebody else's head. So I'm going to finish by leaving you with a provocation, because I know you're going to work in your card groups. And that will be, what can you do when you're working with your people to find out what's the story in their head that's different to the story in your head? And from that point, when you realise there are different stories, that is the point that you will begin to connect, to learn, and it's not just learning about them, you're learning about yourself like Josh did. That's the point that you can really start to create together, work together and collaborate around some possible future stories of our country. So thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to working with you.